Kaleeta.
Hello,
Do I pronounce right?
Of course.
Kaleeta. I love your name, by the way. And you are one of the favorite guests I have on Ocean 17 London International Awards. I like to do the announcement, like,
The Game of Thrones style.
well, like we met like last year at London International Awards. You were here, but I mean, this year you are like a jury president of like creativity in the Metaverse evolution. So I'm very glad to cross your ocean now. 7 questions like the 7 seas.
Let's do it.
You ready? Let's go with the first one. Let's go with the mermaid. Reports of mermaid sightings by explorer and sailor were surprisingly common back then. Sometimes they were said to save sailors from drowning, and other times they were depicted as malicious creatures with powers to entrap seafarers. In either case, they made for some fantastic tales. Now, mermaids bring a sense of wonder from foreign lands that is hard to resist, and many have written about them. If you were to meet a mermaid in real life, assuming that they among us, what would be the first question that you ask to the mermaid?
So I probably would have 2 questions, and they're probably separate. The first one would be, how do your boobs defy gravity? Because at a certain age, I have been like fighting that gravity tail. So that's the first one. That's a quick one. And then the other one is, I think this fun thing of living in infamy, and then living in like this kind of beautiful like appraisal of this beautiful mermaid is great. And I would want to understand, how do they balance being infamous and then also being kind of revered? Because I feel in anything that's worth discussing, you're going to be either someone that's loved and revering, or someone where they're like, oh God, is that that mermaid again? So I would ask them how they've been able to stabilize that for so many years.
Were you intrigued by mermaids when you were a kid?
I was, because, you know, Little Mermaid was like the jam. Like every song was like the jam. And I wanted to be that, right? You wanted to be this mythical creature in the water. I think for me, it's always been such a beautiful story, because having these worlds that live in parallel but never touch, I think has parallels even for my life and for other people's.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Look, the second question is gonna get bloody. Okay. So, just like you know. Okay, sometimes you gotta cut one little piece of yourself off, no matter how it hurts, in order to grow. Now, these were the words whispered by Charles Arthur Salvatore, better known as Charles Bronson, to Tom Hardy during a phone conversation from his prison cell. It was a transatlantic conversation, not just geographically, but speaking from 2 different individualities. Tom Hardy, a very crafty actor. Charles Bronson, you wouldn't say crafty, a serial killer. From one side, you have an amazing person that has done a lot of good in the world. On the other side, a bad person has done bad in the world. Yet these 2 universes have a lesson that they can share. And I remember at that time, Tom Hardy said to Charles Bronson, just broke up with my girlfriend. I'm very down. And he started talking about a flood. And there was a news. In the news, there was this kid that drowned because he got like trapped under the water with his foot.
Yeah.
And he said to Tom that, you know, that would have happened to me because I would have cut off the foot. He said, what I'm trying to say to you, Tom, is this. Sometimes, in order to go, you have to cut off something, a part of yourself, no matter how it hurts. So what part of yourself did you have to let go, if you had to, in your career to become or to grow into the person that you are today?
So for me, I feel I would never cut off, but I would let things atrophy.
That's interesting.
There's a balance. I think you need those things that are broken to remind you that you're whole. I think you need those things that hurt to remind you what pleasure feels like, right? And so that balance and that duality is so necessary. But you don't ever want to grow those dark places, but you need them. You need them because they remind you of your humanity. They remind you of that balance. So I would let certain things atrophy. I think early on in my career, I really, really, really wanted someone to slight me so I could just be like, let's go, right? And
you want something to dislike you.
Or to slight me in some way, right? Not dislike me, because I'm not here to make anyone comfortable, but, at the same time, I don't want to be disliked, but I also feel like if someone thought less of me, I actually preferred it, because it allowed me to, like, use that kind of energy, but it's such a corrosive energy, right? And so now I live on a different fuel. And so I wouldn't cut that out because I needed to be on that fuel for that early part. Now I live on a different fuel, which is more of like knowing that I am and people need me, and so I need to be
Why
that whole
is
person.
Has it changed because of the years, because of the knowledge, because of the experience? So what made you change fuel?
I think 2020 made me change fuel. I think we all reached like a bottom where we're like, anything dark, I just need to leave that. And I need to be more forward-facing with the things that give me life. And I feel that our humanity reached a bottom. And I think we all know when that moment was for us. And there was a moment for me. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Truly, that year was defining for everybody. Like, more or less everybody had to go through some discovery.
Yeah.
But I'm glad. It seems like, you feel more comfortable now with this fuel.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'm comfortable with this new fuel. And I'm comfortable letting things atrophy. Not gonna cut them off. I still see them.
Okay, Danny Boyle's film
of
the Alex Garland novel At the Beach was filmed on Hat Maya, the main beach of Phi Phi Lay Island near Phuket, Thailand. The area was damaged by the movie crew and its ecosystem was endangered. In fact, they import palms and planted them during the movie to make it look like even more perfect than it was. Fortunately, the movie is quite old right now. The area has been reconstructed, and most of the ecosystem has been put back in place. But this shows you how far the movie industry is willing to go to tell a story. Now, we work in an industry that prides itself on storytelling. How far would you go to tell a story? What are you willing to sacrifice in order to make your ideas happen?
I think there's two parts to this, because I feel back then people didn't know the implications. And for them, it was them pushing finances, pushing their vision. And the ecological part, though it was a result, I'm sure they were like, it's not going to hurt anything. It's just a tree. And so from that, I think when you have what information you have, you make the decisions. And you wouldn't change them because you're still operating from that same amount of information. And when we sometimes look back at things and have regret around, making certain choices, I think it's because we have new information.
Right.
And so when I think about how I want to push stories or how I'd want to push stories, with the information I have, I want to push them as far as it's uncomfortable. But I may not know the ramifications of some of that, right? I may not know the end result of what it might do long term. But I do feel there's a balance. There's a balance between telling a story that reaches the masses, but understanding the effects of that story on everyone long term with the information you have.
Would you be willing to sacrifice truth? So, okay, let me explain, articulate for you. We work in advertising. We are supposed to make things look better than they are. But have you found yourself in your career working on a client? I don't want any names, please, but working on a client that you didn't fully agree either with the message or whatever, and you had to sacrifice a little bit of truth in order to get the product out?
Simone, I'm not the person where the truth is inconvenient.
Okay.
I do not do well when the truth is inconvenient. In fact, I'm probably a little bit known for speaking my truth.
Okay.
And there has been times where, no clients being named, because we're all going to be gainfully employed.
I don't want to hear it.
Right. Where I've looked at it and said, no, because it's those little tweaks that we don't think matter, that matter so much. that actually impact us and haunt us later. And so if the truth's inconvenient for someone, I usually don't do well with that.
That's interesting. I had like same kind of experience where like I reached a point, because I think everybody has his own threshold of like, line that you don't want to cross. But and at one point in your career, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that everybody's facing this line. And a couple of times I had to face this line. I didn't want to cross it. I didn't cross it. I paid price for it, but I was glad I resisted. Like,
There's power dynamics. I think early on in my career, I was more malleable to it because I didn't feel I could control the situation, or I didn't know what would happen if I would say no, right? And I think in my old ass age, I'm like, I said what I said. I said what I said, and I'm okay with whatever it is as long as I'm living in my truth.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is a story of two symbolic oceans, a father and a son. Percy Carey, the father, actor or comedian Jim Carrey, passed away in September 1994, 3 weeks after the release of the movie The Mask. Jim put a $10 million check in his father's pocket when he was buried. It was the check Jim wrote to himself a few years earlier, as promised to make it in the movie business. Jim's father lived a life of compromise, ended up working a job he didn't love. He got laid off from the job he didn't love, ended up in the streets. The lesson that Jim learned that day is that you can fail at what you hate, so you might as well do what you love. Was there ever a lesson that someone in your family passed on to you and that became essential to your career?
Yeah, it's funny because I think people believe you are where you work and you're not. And you have to know what drives you, makes, and gives you passion. I don't know if you guys have discussed this, the Angela Mears situation that happened at the Andes. She was 35, young. She was in a judging room and fainted. And then
this happened this year, right?
This year.
She was in Mexico?
Argentina.
Argentina.
And
so she fainted.
She fainted, as we thought she had fainted. And
were you there?
No, but my CCO was in the room, and she was relaying kind of what happened. And I was at Clio at the time, and everyone at Clio is getting reports of what's happening. And then the next day, we heard she passed.
So she fainted, but then she regained consciousness.
No.
She fainted, that's it.
And then the next day passed at 35 within a judging room. And I think I've been someone who's always said yes, because I don't know when the next opportunity is going to come. And I haven't always had the most balance. I love what I do. Like, my God, what we do. Like, when people tell me that they're doing, like, spreadsheets, I'm like, ooh.
Gosh.
But I think there can be a balance of drowning in your dream. So I think...
Drowning in your dreams.
Yeah. Drowning in your dreams.
You're dropping bar, girl.
Dropping bars. Too bad I can't. I have no flow. Don't ask me to rap. I have no flow. But it's this idea of like, as much as you can do what you love, balance it, because you don't know. Like, we're not promised. I think we all kind of act like we're just going to be here, but we don't know. We don't know. So I agree with Jim Carrey. Like, don't spend a day doing something you don't love.
That's awesome. That's a harsh lesson to learn. We're just two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl, year after year, running over the same old ground. What have we found? The same old fears. These are the words of two of the brightest minds of our generation, David Gilmour and Roger Waters, Pink Floyd. The song honors the lost sheer genius of Syd Barrett, which was the original founder of Pink Floyd. If you were to bring back a legendary advertising figure from the past that you can swim in a fishbowl with, who would that be?
Oh, man, I'd have to learn to swim, but I would wade in the waters. I think Ogilvy is fascinating.
Ogilvy is fascinating.
Fascinating to me. And this is what I've heard, and someone's going to probably be like, that's incorrect. He started his advertising career at 40.
Yeah, I've read that.
Yep. I started my advertising career at 40.
And where were you doing before?
I was at Apple, I was at Google, I was at Deloitte Digital.
Doing something else?
Yeah, I was doing digital physical products at scale and kind of that very CX side of it. And so for me, advertising's been the last 2 or 3 years.
Right.
And so I think there's something to be said about viewing the world from the outside and then being in, that you view advertising in a poetic way, and you codify it and you live and breathe it. And for me, like when I look at Ogilvy, he had that same kind of introspection that I feel, I'm not at his level by any means, but having been in another place and now here, I'm processing it in ways where he relates to me and the words that he says.
Would you ever go back to the other world, the universe where you were in, or just like a matter of opportunity, or it's like, or you feel that there was a shift in mindset, and now this is going to be it for a long time?
I think this is going to be it for a long time. For me, I'm a creative, right? And in a room of technologists, creativity has always been king, and then being a room of creatives and advertising, I feel both rooms have different, there's temporal and spatial thinkers, right?
Of course.
Temporal people take emotion and they do it over time. That's advertising for me. Spatial people think of physical things and systems, and playing in both worlds is beautiful. And I'm really liking this temporal world and bringing kind of my spatial self into that space.
That's good. That's good. I mean, it's like the shift in mindset are so interesting because, and fascinating, because sometimes like life change with it, and they always remind me someone like truly like, you know, twisting and turning like an entire room. If this room was your life, it just like turn, and there's no turning back. You can only go into one direction, you know.
Yep.
Anyway, a food chain in the ocean begins with a tiny one-cell organism called the diatoms, which make their own food from sunlight. Shrimp-like creature eat the diatoms. Small fish eat the shrimp-like creature, and bigger fish eat the small fish, and so on. Food chain. Yeah. When I look at the ocean or our creative industry, from 35,000 feet above, I see a different kind of food chain. I see a political and psychological game. Yep. You survive if you're able to manage your emotions, stay focused, and make sure that you don't give too much meaning to something that happened around you that could affect your ultimate goal. Because those are the things that eat you up. That's the type of food chain that spit you out. Do you agree? Or is there a more important trait to survive in this industry? Would you put your guts out there, or you and with the danger of like having someone else eat your guts, or what do you think?
I say balls to the wall, whether that's your ovaries or whatever your balls are. Like I don't feel making myself small to make other people comfortable ever works. So if my version is to be my full emotional self, my full just out there self, I'm going to do that every time. I move in a space, I think, differently because for a very long time, opportunities didn't come. And so any kind of crack in the door for me, I'm going to bust through. I'm going to bust through and have an amount of energy, amount of optimism, and the politics that, you know, and you and I had a conversation before this, that I think play everywhere at certain levels.
Right. Why do you think like opportunity didn't come for a long time?
I feel
it was just like coincidences, like randomness, or you were doing something different?
The universe has never brought me ill will or has ever wanted ill will against me, and I think it's been timing, right? So whatever the factors are, I feel everything comes in the time it needs to. So the opportunities came in the time that I needed them to come. But I think early on, there were just different dynamics. There were different power plays, right, in place. And those things are still there, but there have been some more cracks, right? And so it's allowed me to take advantage in places that I can. And it's something that I'm not going to dull my shine to make other people comfortable, but I'm also not going to move in the same way other people have because I feel there's a new paradigm shift. So hopefully politics have changed. I know, right? We will see.
Wishful
thinking. Optimism.
You are here as a president of creativity in the Metaverse and evolution, and I want to focus on the word evolution and tease you with a question. Now, there is a song called In the Year 2525 by Exordium and Terminus. It was a very popular song during the 70s, and the lyrics say, I'm gonna need to tell the truth, tell no lie. Everything you think, do, and say is in the pill you took today. How would you consider the metaverse? Is it a pill that we were forced to take, or is it just part of the creative evolution?
So I'm going to give a long answer, and I know it's probably...
Of course, you are the president. You had to give a long answer.
So if you think about the beginning of advertising, right?
Right.
It started off with photography.
Right.
And then photography went to cinema. The first language of cinema was to take from people who were in theater. And so you had this camera that sat there and someone acted inside of it. And then creativity brought language to technology. It started to say, we're going to pan, we're going to zoom. And it created something that had never been seen from a language perspective. Same thing from web, right? Here's this website, and then magazine layout brought form to web. I think Metaverse is looking for its language. And I think it's looking for its technology to democratize it. For the web, if mobile had never come around, it would have never been democratized, right? It never would have been adopted. I think the Metaverse came too soon. I do think those who stay in this space and figure out how to create that language will create the language for everyone moving forward.
It's so interesting because, look, it's undeniable that when Metaverse came, I'm talking about a year, 2 years ago, right? 2 years ago, like everybody was on the Metaverse. And then like, because we live in a society that has like, instant gratification and like consume everything, spit it out, it's a single serving type of society. Now it's like, kind of like lost its age. Like, even with the fact that like Meta, like, reduced like the investment. And now hardly like, people like you hear, like, before it was on everybody's mouth, now it's not anymore. So, but you touch upon something that it's interesting, I haven't thought about it, which is like, you think that it came out too early.
I do. I think this is the Y2K moment for Metaverse. So the internet was a fad. I came out during the dot-com bust, and everyone's like, this whole web thing, that's stupid, right? And I remember someone was recruiting me, and they said, it's hard to find people like you because a lot of people got out of this, and your amount of years of experience are hard to find. And so I think by the time it comes back around, they're going to be looking for people who've had this experience, and it's not going to be that many, right? Because we're in that hype cycle. Every technology has a hype cycle. Do you remember when, people were like, TV's a fad?
Oh, man, yeah.
Right? Like, and people was, it's outdoor, it's print, and then TV was the bastard to the right. I think creativity has always needed a muse. It's always needed a container. And there's no better muse. I think the fault of Metaverse is creating it outside of the real world instead of augmenting our real world.
Right. That's interesting. Let's see what's going to happen because, like, at Winder and Thompson, we have been enrolling people, like, using the Metaverse. It was one of the programs I created, like, for, like, global products, like, of HR. It's like, and it's been quite successful. But again, I think like I'm really toying with this idea that you say that it came out too early because I think technology do have a certain kind of timing, and everything is timing in life. So let's see. Hey, Kaleeta, look, like this was awesome. You're very insightful as a person, like super smart, and it was like a very great ocean crossing. So I wish you the best for your stay and like in Vegas and for everything else.
Hope I don't lose too much money.